Well, Frank has just sent me his updated F40, his new rendering of what he has envisaged what a F40.2 would be. So a Mark II or whatever, there it is. I want to drive this car, so I love that. I think you're onto a winner. I think you ought to take this up for a career.
Throughout automotive history, there are a number of cars that can be called iconic, but only a handful of those can be rightfully classified as legendary. For me, to be called legendary, the car has to evolve on its deep-rooted heritage. It has to deliver an immediate visceral impact. And lastly, it has to be out of your league, like the Ferrari F40 rightfully is, unless of course you're Harry Metcalf, who has kindly lent us his real garage to film my dream garage. And be sure to check out on Harry's channel the dispute that we've had this morning, a little bit of argument, a little bit of discussion about the design of the F40 versus the design of the Lamborghini Countach. And you can see that right now, it's just gone live on his channel. This car marks 40 years of Ferrari's pursuit of perfection, and it serves as the opus magnum of founder Enzo Ferrari himself, as it was the last car that he signed off before he drove off on that great highway in the sky. Never before has a car so purposefully connected and captured that emotional essence of a brand like the F40 has done for Ferrari. Now let me explain to you how they've managed to do that. What you're looking at is a car that is truly a supercar. This is designed to be the ultimate supercar of its era, and you can see when I say it's purposefully designed that it is the essence of a Ferrari. Now there's nothing on here that doesn't have to be on there, and this is what we call design for purpose, and in that sense it's beautiful. An intake that has to be there for intake reasons. That is what I call purposeful design. No flash, no excessive design just for beauty's sake. And then you can come back through here, through the section on the bonnet, on the hood, you can see these NACA ducts, and it's the most efficient way of taking air into a hole there, basically. And then the body is something else. Here, it's incredible. You see the offset from the front wheel to the body side. It's not really what we call a Coke bottle shape in terms of the side view or the top view from the side, how it comes in and swings out like that. It's pretty straight along the sill, the rocker panel, but this part is minimalized. It's pulled in. The waist is really tight on this car. Then it swings again way out like this, and that provides you enough area for the air to come into the radiators through here. And that is, again, allowing you to bring the body side out over the rear wheels. Again, a very wide track on this car. The best view of this car has to be a rear three-quarter view of it. You have this beautiful Lexan cover, one of the first cars to actually do this, where you can see the heart and soul of the car. And that engine is something special to look at. Not beautiful in today's standards, because now we just basically tried to design the interior to be beautiful. But this is really showing what a raw supercar this really is. That heart and soul, like I said, is right there for everybody to view it. Now this spoiler here for me is really special. It's not dramatic in the sense of a Dodge Charger, but just a beautiful element on the back. It's almost architectural, but I think it really works with the whole back end of this car, because when you look at this from behind, which most of us will only see, I mean, it's really rare to see a car about 2 meters wide on the road, and this is one of the first cars to actually do that. The proportion of this car from length to width is incredible. That's what gives it that like I said, proper supercar feel. At the rear, I mean, how much more purposeful can you design a car? There's nothing here except 2 round taillights on one side, 2 round taillights on the other side, and just a mesh connecting it all. For my liking, I think the mesh is probably too much, but then again, look at the rest of it. See the exhaust pipes? I mean, that is stunning product design. Single tube in the middle, 2 rather oblong looking ones on the side. They do the job. Impressive. So for me, some of the elements that are raw and crude, like all the gaps, all the slits in the body itself, is not something you would do on an ordinary car. But stuff like this are almost like scars on a design. It's almost like having a gorgeous woman with a few scars on her face, make her much more interesting. And I'm sure she has stories to tell, but this is what the car is known for. All the slits, all the gaps that you have happening on this car. You don't get that in current design. Everything is about as flush and closed off as possible for aero reasons. In my taste, I probably would have removed the mesh to increase the amount of area that could let hot air out. And people will say, well, is that practical or not? This is not a practical car. These wires here obviously block some of the heat coming out, so removing the mesh could have helped quite a bit in terms of thermal efficiency, as we call it. And if you manage to put your hand inside of there to burn your hand on the pipes or something, that's your fault. You shouldn't be probably in the gene pool. Like I said about the mesh, there are a few things that if I was part of the design team or responsible for the design, I probably would have tickled a little bit just to give it a little bit more finesse. And again, you want to be careful that you don't become too sweet with the design of a car like this. It's very easy to start introducing softer lines, curves, flowing lines, and this is a graphic statement of a car, so we have to keep that in mind. Obviously, the straight lines are part of the Ferrari design language of this era. Not a lot of straight lines ever on a Ferrari, but I think what Ferraris really need is that one element that distinguishes them, which is sensuality. And sensuality basically stems from the use of curves, of complex surfaces. So without getting too complicated in the redesign, I'm going to try to add a little bit of tension to the lines because a straight line doesn't have much tension. And then again, as we come to the front of the car, we're looking at a face that for me is not generic, but more anonymous than anything. I think it's hard to tell somebody or have a response that that is a Ferrari. If you were only to actually photograph this area here and to show it to somebody, they would probably not know exactly what car you're talking about. So I think in terms of trying to add character to the car, this is one area that I think we can slightly take up a couple notches and make it more Ferrari-esque. It's a little bit on the calm side for such an aggressive looking supercar, so I think we have to add some element, not of aggressiveness, but something that shows a little bit more, that causes you to have a little bit more respect when you look at the car in this area here. And I think if we can capture that, we can add a little bit more of that Ferrari-ness, Ferrari-esque-ness to it. I think we should be able to come up with a design that really starts to sing like at the highest level of what a Ferrari in this category represents. So let's grab a pen and paper and see what I can come up with. Great. There we have it. Massive thanks to Harry for letting us use his garage. And if you haven't already seen it, head over to his channel when you finish watching this one and watch him try to convince me that that is more beautiful than the F40. So I think I've got some great sketches here, some great ideas, and we're going to head back to the studio now and we're going to see what we can make this look like if we tuned a few of the things that I described and turn it into something more Ferrari-esque. Now, on reflection, I think with the Jaguar E-Type redesign that I did, although it was a minor tweaking, I think I was a little bit too conservative, and perhaps that's from my awe of this design. However, the F40 commands a different type of respect. What I have to do is shock you. I want to accentuate the obscenity of this car to bring out those elements that we recognize as almost vulgar and capitalize on those and make them even more obscene. And what I mean by vulgar is this car is designed to be on the racetrack, and when it's on the racetrack it looks beautiful, but it's not dressed appropriately to be out on a public road. So let's go to the paper, let's start rendering, and as it develops you'll see what I mean. And at the end, I'll be able to describe exactly why I did those things.
That's a bit strong.
Okay, so there we have it. I gotta say, I'm kind of happy with it. I'm comfortable with it. Makes you a bit anxious when you're touching such an amazing car in history, and you want to do something to it that perhaps not everybody's going to agree with it. But it is my vision, and it's got a lot of elements that I like in car design. Obviously, a designer wants the car to look typically nice and pretty and acceptable, but I've gone a little bit, like I said at the beginning, more towards an edgy design, something that is a little bit more in your face, because let's face it, this car is in your face. Let's start from the front. I tried to give it a little bit more curvature in the front. More than actually curvature, it's almost pointed in the front. It really does come across as looking like it's going to be really piercing the air. So whereas the F40 today is a bit flat in plan view, this one is more pointy. Now, I didn't want to pull the front end forward too much. It's already got a pretty long overhang on this car. So what I've done is pull the corners back slightly. So that means that the car looks overall a little bit less long in the front, yet it has the same length because the front end is accentuated with a center point. My objection, I think, on the F40 was, when I mentioned it before, that it looks a little bit simplistic, a little bit generic in a certain way, because Ferrari's never had a real unique one type grille. So I think what we had to do here was develop a grille, or at least an outline of a grille that gave it sort of its own unique character. And I've tried to do that by giving it something almost like a Joker grin. It's not really a smile, it's more of a sneer. And I've also introduced a dive plane. It's also called the canard, and that actually helps to create some downforce on the front end. We know the car has a massive rear end, has a massive rear wing, and to counterbalance that, if we have a little bit of downforce in the front, it will kind of squash the car to the ground probably more evenly. Of course, that has to be checked in the wind tunnel. Now, on the hood, what I've done is I noticed that the area that is sort of designed around the headlamp, the area around that currently on the F40 is very large. So I've compressed it, made it quite a bit smaller, just almost the minimal size to package those two elements. And by doing that, what I've also been able to do is create an air vent of the air that comes into your radiator, and you build up a lot of air pressure in that hood area underneath. You want to release it. I think visually it works, absolutely works visually. And I think you could make it work to release the air pressure underneath. What we have to be careful of is when you flow air over this area here, you want to avoid wind noise and strange things happening with the air. So it's pushed out to the side to try to get it to flow over the side of the car more. And then in the front area in the center of the hood, there are two piddly little NACA ducts. I've made it into one more aggressive NACA duct, one larger, more aggressive NACA duct. And the mouth of the NACA duct starts where the badge is. So there's kind of a tie-in between the badge, and then it becomes slowly the opening for the NACA duct or the intake area here. So I think that can work very well visually. On the F40 today, in side view, that line that comes off the hood downwards is almost straight up and down. It feels like a right angle. That kind of stops the car, I think. It kind of stops the line of flow on the car. And so what I've done is kicked it back in such a way that now it's kind of leaning more towards the front, such that now it's It's pushing the car. It's giving a little bit of oomph to the front of the car. As we move past here onto the door, there are a lot of things that I've decided to change here. Number one, obviously the mirrors. I think having them down here is not really a good place to have the mirror on this type of car. I think it works much better higher up in this area here, because as you're driving the car, you just have to move your head laterally and you'll see in the mirror. And at the same time, what I've done is taken the glass and pulled it up and over into the roof. So now what we have is a glass that doesn't drop, because you can't drop curved glass that's at least that much curvature in it. But what I have now is something called a gull wing door. So the glass goes from the waistline up into the roof, and the door pivots in the middle of the roof, such that you have this gull wing type door system, which is a lot more dramatic than the concept that they have today, which is the door opening normally. On an F40, I think it deserves a door system like that. And you might say again that the glass is perhaps not feasible. Well, it definitely is feasible. It was done on the Alpha 33 Stradale. The next thing you'll notice that I've done on the doors is, if you look at the original intakes on the F40, they're nice, they're dramatic, but are they dramatic enough? I've done that. I've pulled the intakes more in relationship to each other, so you get a flow of the lines inside view, and that works really well. And they're shaped obviously larger, but they keep that NACA efficient NACA duct shape. And the other thing I've done is I've taken advantage of the fact that the hood on the F40 is further out and the fender. So what I've done is added a barge plane. Now the barge plane is this piece here that you can see, and that's a part that would allow the air that's coming out, exhausting from the wheel well, as we call it, not to be lost, to continue to use it and to absolutely be able to, as well as reduce the air pressure in the wheel well itself, it'll guide that air along the side of the car much more efficiently, and even lead it back in here to the other radiator that's back here. So you get a nice flow pattern. Then as we move back, you're going to start to see that there's no body color here in the C-pillar area. And what I've done is eliminated the body color, obviously, it's not there, but I've wrapped the rear glass, or the rear polycarbonate, the Lexan panel that they have there, which is see-through, all the way around, such that it comes all the way up to where the intake, the side intake on the, just behind the quarter glass on the F40 is, such that you get this nice flow. It doesn't get broken up with a pillar, with that red or whatever body color you're using. It doesn't get broken up, so you have this continuous glass almost approach. For me, there's no reason to touch the back view of the car. The F40 is one of the nicest cars I think ever designed. It still looks modern from behind. As simple as it gets, as effective as it gets, as crazy as it gets, because of that massive space between the tail lamps. So you got two on one side, two on the other, and the only thing connecting them is Harry's favorite thing, mesh, I guess. I hate mesh, and I'd probably get rid of it if I could. But what I would really like to see on the F40 is to increase the height of the spoiler in the back. Now, why would I do that? Well, one thing is, obviously it's high on the F40 already, makes a huge statement. But at the same time, I think if we could raise it higher, you would get it into much cleaner airflow, and that can only be a good thing. So you can see here on the sketch that the rear spoiler is much higher than on the original, and in addition, extended the side of the spoiler up higher. And that is a design feature that's been used in spoilers for many years. It controls the airflow much better. It doesn't let it slip off the spoiler itself, so it controls the air. You'll probably think, what the heck is this thing hanging off the bottom of it? Well, if we're going to go for downforce, more wings equals more downforce. It's true. Obviously, we don't want to go overboard with, lots of wings, but if you're able to put a secondary wing underneath the main wing, that secondary wing, what it will help to do is reduce the air pressure underneath the wing. And what that will then do is actually give you downforce through pulling the car down. It's kind of like what the effect of the diffuser does in the back of the car. So there's some aerodynamic principles involved in this design of this little spoiler that's hanging off the main spoiler. And you'll see that, I'm pretty sure, almost positive, that the 87 Ferrari Formula One car was running two wings. One large one on the top, one smaller one directly underneath it. I did it to add a little bit more drama. I think it makes a huge visual statement to the back of the car. So let's move on. There are those four gills on the back here. I've simplified them, made them one massive air outlet through this area here. So now that and the one massive air outlet here in the front are talking to each other. So they kind of relate and they're speaking the same language. And so I think it works much better.
Frank has just sent me his updated F40, his new rendering of what he has envisaged what a F40.2 would be. So a Mark II or whatever, there it is. Well, first, I like the how he's dealt with the front end. It looks faster. If you look at the previous one, it's sort of slabby and sort of straight across and things. I like that arrow shape. I like the speed it suggests of the car. Bigger wheels, which must mean bigger brakes. I'm all for that. But the really interesting thing, I think, is what's he done to the doors here? Look at that glass going up into the roof. Has he put more interesting doors on, which is something I wanted? And then that mirror. That looks great, how he's designed the mirror. Suddenly it looks very pedestrian, the normal F40 mirror. It won't expand for some reason. Love that. The increased sort of air needed for the engine and this sort of how this is another duct in there. Love that. I look at the rear wing, it's growing up, but I'm not sure about this appendage. Does it really need a bi-wing? I think Frank likes bi-wings on cars if you think of his Escort Cosworth. So overall, yeah, I want to drive this car, so I love that. I want to see behind if he actually left that grille out, if he got away with that as well. So thanks for Frank, but yeah, I think you're onto a winner. I think you ought to take this up for a career.
So again, I think in summary, the car makes sense for the changes. I haven't changed anything for no reason at all. That's not how I think designers should approach design. You should always be looking at your design in terms of how to make something better than it is. And I'm not saying, again, I want to be very careful when I do these type of designs that I don't step on the toes of the giants that came before us who did these amazing designs in the first place. I've only tried to tweak it in such a way that it suits my taste a little bit better. And I've always tried to put myself in their shoes in the sense of what was possible during the time that they made this car. So I'm happy with it. If you guys are happy with it, let me know down below in the comment section as always, because I love reading your comments. It keeps me up at night and I don't get a lot of sleep, but I love reading those comments. And before we go, the winners of the Jaguar E-Type comment competition from a week or so ago are going to pop up on the screen now. If you're one of those lucky four, we're going to be putting those sketches into the mail very soon. You'll be getting them soon. And again, the top 4 comments that we receive on this episode, so these comments could be anything. They could be your analysis, they could be your dream car garage, dream whatever garage. And those top comments, we're going to look through them all and we're going to pick the ones that we find are the best, that make us laugh perhaps, or that make us think a lot. Anything that makes us have a reaction, the best 4 comments, we're going to pick those ones out and you'll be winning one of these sketches here. So this is one of the preparatory sketches, another one, and another one. So 4 of these sketches will be awarded to the best comments that we get. Ciao.